All right, your final exam has 50 multiple choice questions, and there's 87 marks in the written. Whoops, sorry, I opened the wrong one. That's my physics one. It's still 50 multiple choice. But it's locked up. Hang on, guys. So there are 15 written response questions for a total of 87 marks in the written. Okay. So when you get to the test, okay, you'll get there and the test will have your name on it already. Okay, and in the test will be your multiple choice answer form, periodic table, and formula sheet. Okay, that'll all be included in there. So you don't need to bring, in fact, you can't bring your formula sheet or periodic table. You're getting a fresh one, okay, for the final exam. Everything you need is on there. Okay, reminder that you need to bring several fresh pencils and a calculator with good batteries in it, okay, for exam day. When you start the test, what should you do? Read it through first. Yep. Okay. Just take a quick glance through it, okay, and maybe highlight some things you think are important. Okay, key points, things like that. What part of it should you do first? Written. 87 marks versus 50 marks, and the multiple choice are usually quicker to do than the written part. Do you have to do the written part in order? Nope. Okay. Go through there and mark off which questions you are most confident in. Do them first. Okay, always do the ones you're most confident in first and come back and do the others after. Okay, the worst thing you can do on a final exam is stall. Okay, and what I mean by stalling is you read a question and you don't know how to do it. So you sit there and stare at it and accomplish nothing. Okay, if within 30 seconds of reading a question you do not have an idea of where to go to the next question. Okay, you can always come back to that question. It'll still be there. But if you allow that question to eat up the time you could have used to do questions you're going to do well, okay, then that's not a good or productive way to get through your test. Okay, 30 seconds, guys. If you don't know what to do, move on to the next one. Okay, you can always come back. And sometimes, you know what, going through the rest of the test, doing the multiple choice, coming back, sometimes in the multiple choice, there's little tips or things that jog your memory. Okay, that's why it's important to read through a test. Okay, see if there's little tips and hints about other questions. There usually are. Okay, so make sure that you do that and make sure you avoid stalling on a question. Okay, if it's the only question you got left and there's 15 minutes left in the test, stall on it all you want. Sit there and obsess over it for the last 15 minutes. But make sure everything else is done first. Okay, get the marks you can get. Okay, and do the best you can on those ones. Then worry about ones that you're less sure about. Okay, that's the one thing I see people do more often than anything else on a final exam is rob themselves of time on the stuff they could have done. Okay. All right. Started out with, okay, we started out with structure of the atom. Okay, I am so much less concerned with people and places and stuff on the final exam. Okay, there could be like one question, one multiple choice question, and it would be on somebody like super important. Okay, the people I would consider to be super important would be like Rutherford and Dalton. Okay, Dalton came up with the idea of the atom, and Rutherford's the guy that came with that just proved the nucleus existed. Those are the two kind of most important things. Okay, but yeah, I'm going to be very much less concerned with people and places. Do you still need to know structure of the atom? Yeah. Okay, you need to know what's in the nucleus. Okay, what are electrons? What are protons? Things like that. I mean, we had a question on the unit exam that was about aluminum, and it said the aluminum ion with a 3+ charge has, and the answers were like gained 3 protons, lost 3 electrons, and I can't remember what the other ones were. Okay, can you gain protons? No, because what does that do to the nucleus? It changes it. Anything that changes the nucleus results in kaboom. Okay, it's either nuclear fusion or nuclear fission. It's one of the two. Okay, you can't change the nucleus. Only electrons can change. Those are like application questions about your knowledge of the atom. Everybody with me there? Okay, so structure of the atom, that's multiple choice territory. Okay, naming compounds was the next thing we went over. You got to remember our rules for naming molecular compounds, naming ionic compounds, writing the formulas for molecular, writing the formulas for ionic. Okay, those are definitely things that we need to know. And certainly there'll be some multiple choice. And the proper formula for nickel 2 bromide is A, B, C, or D. Okay, but if you can't write the formula for a compound, can you balance a reaction? Okay, you can't predict a reaction or write the products or anything like that. So naming compounds, that's one of those essential skills that you have to polish up for the final. Properties of compounds. Did a lab on that. Probably multiple choice stuff. Okay. Ionic compounds have these properties. Molecular compounds have these properties. Right? Ionic compounds are usually soluble. Okay. They conduct electricity in solution. They can be strong acids or strong bases, that kind of stuff. Okay. Okay, solubility and the polar nature of water. Okay, also multiple choice. Okay, remember what this means, the polar nature of water. Okay, water's a polar molecule. Electrons are not evenly distributed. They spend more time down by oxygen, making one end positive, one end negative. That makes that hydrogen bonding happen, right? Cohesion, adhesion, all of that kind of stuff. Okay, make sure you understand how that works because there's probably some multiple choice questions about water's strange polar behavior. Okay, and then terminology to do with solubility, precipitates, solutes, solvents. Okay, not so much that I'm going to have a question that asks what's a solvent, but I'm going to use the term solvents, solutes in other questions, and you need to know what that means in order to answer those questions. Okay. Okay, all of your reactions skills, writing a reaction, balancing a reaction, predicting the products of a reaction, all of that, okay, is on there. Some of it in the multiple choice, but very little there. Okay, most of that is written. Big marks. Okay. If I ask you to to predict the products of a reaction, that's going to be a 4-mark question. Okay. You'll get a mark for identifying the type of reaction, a mark for pairing up the products correctly, right? A mark for balancing out the equation, that kind of stuff. So it's going to be, those are big marks. There's going to be a few of those because that shows me if you can do all of this other stuff. Okay, so make sure that you review that. That's something we can go over today or tomorrow or both, okay, once we're done this. Okay, and then the mole equation. Oops, that M's supposed to be little. Okay, mole equation, little n, or n equals little m over big M. Okay, don't forget about Avogadro's number, although it's on the test, you don't have to memorize it. Okay, the number of particles in a mole. Okay, but you are going to be asked to do a few. I think it's 3 mole equation. No, you won't have to do all 4. Pretty sure it's just 3. Okay, and that's in, obviously, the written parts. Okay, and those are 4 marks each as well. Okay, so it adds up pretty quick. Okay, how do you study for that? Do them, right? Okay, you got to practice those things. You got a bunch of those on the final exam review package that I gave you, but you also have a whole bunch of worksheets from back in the chem unit that you have the keys for. Okay, they're either on my website or they're actually on the sheet itself. Okay, I would go through a lot of those. Okay, if you're getting them all right, then you don't need to do as many. Okay, but if it's something you're struggling with, then it's something you need to practice more of. Review the podcasts of me going over that stuff. Okay, that kind of thing. Okay, for the mole equation, remember, there's only 4 ways I can ask that, and in every mole equation podcast, there's me going over the 4 ways. Okay, so it's worthwhile to watch it at least once, okay, to see how that's done. Okay, and then if you have questions, come in and get help on that. All right, that takes care of the chem unit. Okay, in Unit 2, talked about the cell theory. And the cell theory is important, okay, the 3 points. Okay, so usually a way to incorporate that into a written response answer. That's what you were asked to do on your unit exam. Right, especially the second point of the cell theory, which is the most important one. Anyone remember what it is? What do cells do? Carry out the basic functions of the organism. Remember, there was almost always a way to work that into just basically any answer. Okay. Okay, and we talked about microscopy and things like that, but there's basically nothing on microscopy on the test. Okay. You're going to be asked to label a cell. Okay. Label or give the function of the particle or the parts or both. Okay. You don't know which one because I'm not telling you. That way you have to study both. Sorry about your luck. No, I'm not going to put both on. Okay. But because you don't know which one's on there, you have to study them both. Okay. All right. So yeah, got to be able to label, or it could be a multiple choice question that asks, instead of what is structure number 4, it could be something like, what would happen to a cell if structure 4 were absent? In other words, what does structure 4 do? Okay, things like that, so that you have to know the functions as well. Okay, and then cell transport. Also in the written, very much like what you had on the unit exam. Here's a situation. Okay, which form of cell transport is going to be most important in this situation? Is it osmosis? Is it active transport? Is it diffusion? Okay, things like that. Right? You're going to have to be able to then explain, here's how this cell transport process works. Here's what's going to happen in this situation. That kind of thing. Okay, the one we had on the unit exam was the slugs vacation disaster. Right, where they went into the Great Salt Lake. Well, that was going to be osmosis. They were going to be surrounded by salt and was going to suck all the water out of them. Okay, things like that. Okay, going to also work in there cell size and transport. We did that lab on with the cubes. Okay, remember that diffusion is really slow, so as a result, cells can't get really big because it would take too long to move stuff, okay, by diffusion. Okay, that's also going to be a written response item. Okay, on your unit exam, that was the amoeba eating the Starship Enterprise question. Okay, the giant amoeba attacking the Enterprise. No amoeba could get that big, okay, because of the surface area to volume problem, okay, and diffusion. Okay, then we're going to have some stuff on plant structure. Okay, and I say in the written, but I'm not going to make a question that's like, what part of the plant is this? Okay, in the written response, but you will probably have to talk about plant structure as part of an answer for another plant question. Okay, so knowing what the roots do and the stems and the leaves and the layers of the leaf, right? So this is kind of about specialization as well. Right? So specialization and multicellularity was the context in which we talked about the parts of the plant, because the parts of the plant were made of specialized cells that did a specific job. Okay, so things like that. Leaf layers would be part of this. Okay, so know about, you know, the stomates and the guard cells and the palisade layer and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, plant transport. Obviously, we spent quite a bit of time on that, and it relates back to cellular transport because osmosis is a big part of that, okay, as is the polar nature of water. Okay, certainly something you'll need to be able to explain, okay, or apply to some other situation. Yes, definitely written. Could be some multiple choice as well. Phloem and xylem, yes. Yeah. Okay, then plant growth and development. Okay, that's going to be written and multiple choice. Okay, things in there, hormones, tropisms. Okay, how do they happen? Probably diagrams, probably lots, probably more than any other, well, this in global systems would have the most diagrams related to their questions. And that'll pretty much take care of Unit 2. Okay, for physics, okay, V equals d over t, V equals d over t, scalars and vectors. Okay, that's probably more multiple choice. Probably not going to have any like 4 or 5 mark problems about V equals d over t. Okay, but there could be an easy one in the multiple choice, something like that. Okay, you also need to remember which things are scalar and which things are vector, because if you're asked to solve for displacement, you need to remember displacement's vector because you solve for vector quantities differently than you solve for scalar quantities. Okay, so it's important to know that one. Okay. Graphing, some multiple choice, some written. Okay. Y equals mx plus b. position versus time, and velocity versus time graphs. Okay, you're going to be asked to interpret and calculate. Okay, so you could have a question that's simple, like what's going on in part A of this velocity versus time graph, and you just have to look at the shape and tell me. Okay, but it could also be, how do you calculate the displacement of the object over the entire trip from this velocity versus time graph, or from this position versus time graph? Okay, or how do you calculate the average velocity here, right? Or I give you a graph that's got the equation on it, a position versus time graph, and ask you how far will the object have gone if it was allowed to travel for 200 seconds when only 30 seconds shows up on the graph. Okay, so you're extrapolating using y equals mx plus b. Okay, that stuff is certainly going to all be on there. Okay, and there's a fair amount of calculating and stuff that goes along with that, so there's opportunity for marks there. Okay, acceleration will be in both parts. There will definitely be an acceleration problem in the written response where you have to use that formula. You may even have to use that formula as part of graphing at some point. Then, most important concept in physics. Work's a change in energy, and it's force times distance. Expect for certain to see at least one, if not both, okay, of the energy types involved here as written response problem solving questions, just like what we did in class. You know, like a force of 400 newtons pushes an object from a speed of 0 meters per second to 10 meters per second. Over what distance was the force applied? Okay, so FD equals the change in kinetic energy, and you solve for it there. Okay, or you know, how much work is involved in moving a load of bricks, mass 1,000 kilograms from the ground to a height of 50 meters. Okay, something along those lines. You're going to have those kind of work energy theorem problems. Okay, certainly expect to see those. Okay, law of conservation of energy, EI equals EF. Okay, the roller coaster questions, okay, like we went over. Okay, types of energy, chemical, electrical, magnetic, could be some multiple choice questions about that. Oh, it has to be written, yeah, sorry. Okay, so types of energy is probably going to be multiple choice type of stuff. Okay, then we got thermodynamics, okay, like perpetual motion machines, why they can't work based on the, you know, laws of thermodynamics, first law and second law. Okay, we talked about heat engines and heat pumps. Okay, there could be some stuff in both the written where you'd have to explain something or in the multiple choice. for that. Okay, and then that's it for that unit. Okay, and then the unit we just went over, which obviously is most fresh in your mind. Okay. Okay, components and factors, just like that St. John's question on your unit exam, expect something like that. Here's a location, tell me about the factors that affect the climate and how they do so. Okay, so similar kinds of stuff. As I said earlier today, I'm going to assess that stuff exactly the same way that I assessed it on your unit exam. All right. So this could be multiple choice and written. Okay, climatograms goes with biomes. Exactly the same as it was on your unit exam. Okay, and again, energy transfers applications, same as it was, like you had the Quincy question. Okay, what happens to energy when it strikes the Earth's surface? Okay, so we're talking about conduction, convection, and radiation, but we're also talking about absorption, reflection, and conversion. Because obviously, this has to happen before any of those can happen. Okay? We can't transfer what we don't have. Right? So there has to be, an absorption of energy in order for the Earth to start distributing it and transferring it from one place to another. Okay, wind patterns and Coriolis effects. Okay, multiple choice probably most likely on that. I mean, there still could be a question about transferring energy using winds and latent heat and stuff like that. I should probably write latent heat up here with number 3 as well. Okay, multiple choice and written. Okay, I would say that probably your specific heat capacity problem would be a multiple choice problem on the final, just because they're so simple. Okay, but you will definitely have a heating curve question as a written response item on your final exam. Okay, so make sure you go over that. Oh, sorry, I go too far. Okay, and then biomes, multiple choice, picture and description, same as was on your unit exam. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff, right? Remember that June 17th and June 20th, I am here all day, available for help for you, so pop in. If you pop in, keep in mind that there will only be these 3 chairs and this table in here. Okay, so if you have a lawn chair hanging around, it might not be all that bad an idea to bring it with you if you want to have a place to sit, because all of my desks will be in the gym. Okay, that's just kind of the way it goes during exams, but obviously I'm here to help you during that time. But if you want to have a place to sit other than the floor, you will probably, unless you want to sit on the lab stool. I can always bring lab stools across, but they're not very comfortable. Okay, so you might want to bring a lawn chair with you to sit on, okay, when you come. Okay, that should be all of it that's going to be on there. All right, do you guys have any questions right now that you would like me to answer? Eric? Mole equation stuff, yep. Okay, so let's say example mole equation question. So I'm picking a tough one here, okay? Making this one kind of as tough as it can be so we can review as many things as possible. All right, what is the mass of 1.5 times 10 to the 25 molecules of calcium nitrate? Okay, so I'm looking for little m. In order to have little m, I need to have n, the number of moles, and big M, the molar mass. Well, I can get molar mass right now because they told me what material it is. It's calcium nitrate. That is Ca. Nitrate's a polyatomic ion, NO3. It has a charge of -1. Calcium has a charge of +2. What do I have to do with polyatomic ions? I mean, yes, I have to drop and swap, but I have to put brackets around them so that this 2 applies to the whole ion, okay, and not just to the oxygens. All right, so that's my formula for calcium nitrate. Now I can figure out its molar mass. So I'll have 40.08 for my calcium. I've got 2 nitrogens. Okay, so that's going to be 14.01 times 2. Okay, and then I'm going to add that to 6 oxygens. Okay, to get our capital M there. So all right, so we got 164.10 grams per mole. Okay, so that's capital M. That's the mass of 1 mole of calcium nitrate. Now, if I'm going to find little m, I still need the number of moles. Well, they told me the number of molecules I have. Can I find the number of moles with that number? What do I have to do? Divide it by Avogadro's number, right? Okay, so number of moles is going to equal our 1.5 times 10 to the 25 divided by 6.02 times 10 to the 23. Whoop. Whoops, and not 1.05, it's just 1.5. Second, and then I press the comma. It stands for times 10 to the power of, and then the number I write after that is the power. Okay. All right, so I'm going to divide that by Avogadro's number, 6.02, second E23. All right, so I'm looking at, I've got 24.916 moles. All right, so now that I know that, 24.92 we'll say. Okay, now I've got N. Can I calculate M now that I have big M and N? Yes, so I have to manipulate N equals little m over big M, multiply both sides by big M, and it comes over there. So I'll have my 164.10 times 24.92 to give me my mass. (4,088.87 grams of calcium nitrate. Okay, is that ringing a bell? Seems like you guys had all the answers when I was asking what the next step was, so that's good. Okay. Certainly, though, it's a skill that we want to go over, okay, because it's something that's going to be worth big marks on the test. Carly. Yeah, they're color-coded on your periodic table. I printed your periodic table in color. Ones that are 2s, I think, are yellow, orange for the 4, and blue for the 8. Something like that. There's a color code and a legend on your periodic table, so you'll know which ones. No, phosphorus and sulfur are solids. Yeah. Okay, so you guys can, if you're going somewhere else for scheduled help, you can head there now.